Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. My name is Gaston Fornes. I'm here in Madrid at the ESIC Business and Marketing School. And the idea today is to have a conversation or presentation on my latest book, The China-Latin American Axis. This is the second edition of this book. The first one appeared in 2011, and it was a very demanded book, so the publisher asked us to develop a second version or second edition. So this is a book that has been widely read, and also that has created some noise, let me put it this way, especially in China, Latin America, because it was one of the first that was dealing with the relations between these two regions or countries, and also because it was one of the very few focused on business. I mean, there are many other studies or publications on the political relations, on the international relations about China and Latin America, but this book was one of the first focused on business. So let me make first of all an introduction why China and Latin America is important. Basically, because over many years, especially after the Second War, what we had is commerce at the international level that was dominated by the US, the EU, and Japan. This is called the triad, yeah? And they concentrated something like 75% of the world trade. The thing is, why China and Latin America is important? Because they are creating a new axis of trade. And when I say axis of trade, this is not only important in the context of how globalization is working, it's because it's the first trade or important axis of trade between emerging economies. I mean, if you see what we have in front of us, we have that the US, Japan, and the EU, 20 years ago, we had an important volume of trade. Well, what we see now is that China and Latin America is many times what Europe and Japan were trading 15 years or 18 years ago. Again, the important thing is it's not only that China is closer to Latin America or Latin America is closer to China. The important thing is, at the global level, is that we have this new axis of trade and of course, investment. So let's say something about trade. Well, first of all, let's talk about the trade relations. The flows of trade and investments or trade basically exceeding 275 billion. As I said, this is important. This is important in the context of the globalization. Again, important in terms of quantity, and important in terms of this is the first axis that is that big between emerging economies. So, for example, we had a flow of trade that has increased 22 times in the last 15 years. This is amazing. I mean, it's really high. And for example, if we see 2010, 2013, there was 27% a year, and then it has been in the last year growth. The growth in the last years has been only 6.5, 7%, which still is very high. Of course, what we're seeing is something growth, and then something more normal. Yeah. The other thing is, this is also very important, especially for Latin America, for two reasons. The first one is because Latin America usually exports agricultural products, yeah? And their main market has been traditionally the US and the EU. And this is for the first time that Latin American producers are finding a third market. An important one because in the US and the EU there are many subsidies and many barriers for these agricultural products, and this is something in China they are not finding. So they can compete against other producers, other competitors, even local, in a better position. So this is, again, for the first time Latin America is finding this kind of market for its main exports, agriculture. Also, China has been responsible for the commodities cycle or super cycle of increases in price, which Latin America is one of the main producers. From copper, for example, in Chile, to soybean in Argentina and Brazil, oil in Venezuela, or other different raw materials that are produced in the region. So what we're seeing here is are complementary trade partners. On the one side, we have natural resources or agricultural resources. In many cases, these are agricultural resources with some added value in the origin, and then what we are receiving, or what Latin America is receiving in exchange of this, are manufacturers with some low and medium technology. Why these are important? Because the Latin American market is not a market with a high purchase power, so having, in general, on average, so having access to these products that are not that expensive and they can be easily available from China has been a really good way to increase the access to several products to the Latin American citizens. So again, the idea of having this complementarity in the trading flows is important. Again, when you go to other regions, this is not always the case. So the other thing is in relation to the different countries or different markets in Latin America in relation with China. In this slide, what we see is, in general, well, there is some surplus on trade, surplus and deficits in different countries. One of the main problem or the main deficit with Mexico. I mean, the main reason for Mexico is that many Chinese companies are exporting to Mexico and they are producing or manufacturing their pieces or different spare parts in Mexico, so they can sell into Central America or into the US and Canada within their free trade agreement. So this is not a big problem, or it is a big problem for Mexico in some way, because it's not always nice to have a deficit in the trade, but it's not as problematic as it looks, because there is an added value in Mexico coming from China, and then companies, whether Chinese or Mexican or American companies, transforming these products and then selling finished goods in the US and in Canada, as I said before. Then probably the other countries that are increasing their deficit are because they are not selling that, or they are buying a lot, basically, from China. Mainly, as I said, technology products, and they need to continue selling more and more raw material to compensate this deficit. In terms of investments, what we have seen is Latin American is a major destination for Chinese products. When we did the first analysis for the first book, this was Chinese companies were increasing their position as investors, foreign investors. They reached the point of being the third largest country in Latin America after the US and Spain, and now, under the US and Europe, European countries, and then now is what we have is they are very close to being there, to reach the levels of the European countries. So China, it is in some places the second largest investor, in some places the third, but still the important thing here is there is a new foreign investor that was not present before and is growing in its presence. And we're not talking about the country here, we're talking about many companies that are investing there. And we have seen not only on one area, which is probably extractive industry, which is the traditional or one of the traditional areas in Latin America, and we have famous cases like Minmetals and Codelco, Baosteel and Vale, and these were signed like many years ago, 10 years ago. Some of them didn't materialize as they were planned, but still there were many other programs, like for example the CMPC and PDVAs, Petróleo de Venezuela, basically, in Venezuela, that have been working for many years, and there are many others. Yeah? Then we have seen, especially in the last years, this is something, there were many promises in the first decade, from 2005 to 2010, about infrastructure. Now what we are seeing is many of these projects that are being materialized. And for example, the power plants in Venezuela and Ecuador from Sino Hydro, or for example, a very big hydroelectric plant in Ecuador, 1.7 billion. This is one of the largest investments outside China in an infrastructure. So this is, I included that because I thought it was important. There are many others, like for example, there is a canal in Central America that there was a plan for a Chinese company to build it, and still dealing with some problems in the implementation. And also, another important thing, if we move from the extractive industries and the infrastructure, is what we call the market seeking. Basically, companies investing in Latin America because they want to get access to the Latin American market. Here I would like to highlight 2 or 3. First of all, the car manufacturers, BYD or Chery. They are major manufacturers in China, and they have been one of the first Chinese manufacturers, there are many of course in China, in investing in Latin America. And there are countries where they have reached really high market share, like for example in Chile, the market share of these Chinese cars can be seen every day actually. Yeah. Then we have Geely, for example, manufacturing air conditioners in Brazil. Or we move from manufacturing to services, and we have the ICBC in Argentina, when they bought the Standard Bank from Argentina. So this is also again important. ICBC, as you may know, this is it's the largest bank in the world for capitalization. And having this investment in Argentina is a major development in the internationalization strategy of this bank. Some comments. As I said, well, we have these complementary trading partners. The same can be said in investments. What we see is that this Chinese foreign investment to Latin America is expected to continue. Actually, what we see is like $10–20 billion in projects announced every year. Not all of them at the end they are materialized, especially those infrastructure, or some of them with problems in the extractive industry, but in general this is what we see. And the most important thing is, at least I see personally, something that I like beyond the extractive industries, because extractive industries companies need to go there, is that there are many medium-sized or big companies that are currently exporting or have been exporting for many years from China to Latin America, many of them with a local partner who has been their main access to the local market, and these companies from China are extending their value chain, or the value chain, and they are buying, or they are acquiring, or they are getting joint ventures with the local partner. So they are increasing they are moving from only manufacturing to also distributors or retailers of products. So what they are doing is acquiring local brands, distribution channels, or retail services. So what we see is an increasing penetration of Chinese companies in the market. What about the future? This is in terms of, this is only to get an idea of how the investments from Chinese companies in Latin America has been developing over the years, and we can see it's a clear upward trend. So what about the future? Well, there is a big thing in China, which is the One Belt, One Road. The One Belt, One Road is a major project from the Chinese government, led by the Chinese government, to develop different access to markets. Actually, it's the new Silk Road, comparing with the Silk Road that they had several centuries ago, where they were selling their products outside China. So this One Belt, One Road is, as I said, it's a major thing. They want to link China with Europe. They want to link China with countries in Southeast Asia, and also countries in the Pacific, which means that Latin America can benefit from this. So what we can expect from this, and this is what I'm copying here, is the result of agreements signed between China and some countries or some institutions in Latin America. So we see a progressive increase of Chinese FDI and access to new markets in Latin America as part of the One Belt, One Road, investment infrastructure and participation in big corporations and financial entities. So again, we continue with more or less what we have seen in a more formal way, and also within a part of this policy, very big policy from China, which is the One Belt, One Road. And we see that the trade competition between China, Mexico, and the US, especially in gas and oil, will be more open or more transparent, and also there will be more green policies, which is also important for natural resources. And finally, an increased integration and deeper impact, or clear impact, of the Chinese diaspora, which means Chinese citizens living in Latin America, especially small and medium entrepreneurs, so they can integrate better in the society. So these are the prospects for this for what we see of the future. I mean, the One Belt One Road probably is one of the largest the largest projects for the development of the international economy that we are going to see, or we are seeing now, but especially we are going to see the results in the next 5, 10, 20 years, and Latin America can benefit from this in the areas I just mentioned. So to conclude, the first one is the emerging markets are getting a growing importance in the world trade. Now they are among the top 10 exporters. Also see that foreign direct investment are increasingly heading to emerging markets, and what we see here is that in general, emerging economies, and within this China and Latin America, actually are the two largest, the two top destinations. If you add Latin America as a region plus China, they get more than 50% of the foreign investment flows since 2011. Well, we see also that emerging markets are still emerging, so they are in the way, in many cases, to be developed. But this status of emerging means that there are business opportunities in value chains, for example, to reduce transaction cost, to develop new sources of competitive advantage, and also in improving the relations with the regulator and having a more transparent market in different places. Then what we see is a new axis of trade and investment, and I mentioned this, which is one that is complementing the traditional trade axis between the US, or among the US, the EU, and Japan. And in terms of the relation between China and Latin America, more trade and more FDI means more business opportunity. So what's next? Well, what we are seeing is a change in the balance between developed and emerging economies, a relative decrease of developed economies in the world economy. What we see is emerging markets, in this case China, as a foreign investor, which is something that's relatively new. Usually the foreign investors have been companies from developed economies. And the last point, which is not here, but I would like to highlight, is the One Belt One Road initiative from the Chinese government, which creates big opportunities for everyone in this initiative, including Latin American companies and Latin American markets. Okay, so I think this is the presentation, and now I understand there are some questions about different programs here in the school, and I'm happy to hear that.
Okay, well, what do you think are the 3 best points of this program?
Okay, when we talk about this program, I imagine there is the International MBA and the Global MBA. The strongest point of these programs are that when we call them international or global, call them global, we mean international, we mean global. International is that, I mean, candidates need to spend 50% of their time in Europe and they are 50% in Asia, and those doing the global MBA, what they get is a global experience, which is working, operating, and studying and living in 3 continents, Europe, Asia, and America, in the US. So they have experience living, again, operating and studying in the blocks that represent something like 80% of the world's economy. So this is something very unique. There are very few programs, in particular MBA programs, that offer this kind of option. There are other programs that offer a week here, a week there, but having this period in the program, embedded in the program, is not that common. Second, the other thing is that this program is developed together, so it's not like candidates go in one place and then join other groups, and probably the coordination is not good. I mean, we have developed the 2 or eventually the 3 parts to fit the training program, and also this is recognized, which is also important for some, recognized by getting 3 degrees in the case of the Global MBA, or 2 degrees in the case of the International MBA. One for each of the participating institutions. This program also is recognized. It has been accredited by the most important international accreditation bodies. We talk about the ACSB, AMBA, and the FMD. ACSB has accredited Florida International University. AMBA, our program here, is accredited by AMBA and also by the FMD. And the joint program with Shanghai International Studies University is also accredited by the FMD. So There are signs of quality everywhere in the program. Just as a conclusion of this, the latest Bloomberg Business Week ranking, which is one of the most important rankings for MBAs, has placed this International MBA in the number 28th or 27th. I don't remember, 26th or 27th. Last year was one and this year was the other. I don't remember if it was 27 or 28th. So this is important. And these are the main characteristics, or very distinct characteristics of the program.
Please, could you give me some examples of the below degree?
The examples of careers or the development of careers, well, it's interesting to mention because graduates from this program, they are spread around the world, and this is something that one of the things that we are very proud of. And actually, one interesting thing was last couple of years ago when we had one of the audits from the EFMD. They wanted to talk to alumni, and there was no alumni here in Madrid living, so we had to have everyone on Skype. What we see is people working in different places, whether in Asia, in Europe, or in America, working in general good industries, non-industries. For example, many are working from this year we have, and this year, last year, there are like 4 working in Amazon, some of them here in Madrid, some of them working in the UK, some of them are working in consulting, some of them are working in retail. They are working in service sector also, for example, a hotel. There is one guy working in Thailand, running a hotel from one of these major hotel chains. But the important thing here is that they can make, or they have made the transition from where they were when they started the program, and to leapfrog like several years in their career development as a result of the program. I want to stress the important thing is about the international mobility. For example, there are many that stay in China, but after a couple of years in China working with a Chinese company, what they do is they are being sent to other places to develop the market for the Chinese company, or the other way around. They went back to some countries, and then some of them, their original countries, and then companies send them back to China to grow and to develop the market in China.
Okay, the last question. Well, for a person who is living in Latin America, which of these programs would you suggest of them?
I mean, the 2 programs are extremely good. The difference, of course, is that, as I said, one is in two places, the other is in 3 places. This means 3 places means a longer program. Yeah, so if people can afford to stay longer, I think the global MBA is a stronger option, and that's why we have divided the 2, because we understand that not everyone can afford to be living in different places for that long. So if we're talking about Latin America, probably the International MBA, well, probably not, definitely International MBA is a really good option, because they are living and they are used to Latin America, and then they spend some time here in Europe, and then they go to Asia. And going back for the global MBA will be in the US. Of course, it's an amazing opportunity to understand and operate and live in the US context, which is different from the other 2 also. But probably in Latin America, we are more familiar with the US context because of closer links.
Thank you, Dr. Gaston, for your presentation.
Okay.